Good morning. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to meet the one and only Phil Tippett, the recipient of our Vision Award. Make yourself here, Locarno. Words are not enough to describe what this gentleman sitting at the table has achieved. The conversation will be led by Manlio Gomarasca, one of the world's leading men when it comes down to cinema. And I give them the word, the floor, the table, and then you will have the opportunity to ask questions. Enjoy the conversation. It will be unique. It will be something that you will tell your grandchildren. And I'm just sorry I have to miss it, but enjoy. And Phil, thank you so much for being here with us in Locarno. It means the world. And thank you for granting us the labor of your 30 years plus work for Mad God.
Thank you. So, Phil, let's start from the real beginning. Where your passion for fantastic world come from?
Where does it come from?
Your passion for the fantastic world.
God, I don't know, because it was so, it's got to be when I was around 5 years old.
Wow. And how? You saw some movie that inspired you?
Yeah, King Kong was on television.
Okay.
And that fostered a huge interest in dinosaurs.
Okay.
So I'm very obsessive and focused. So I didn't hang out with the other kids. When I was in high school, I didn't like. Well, I liked people, but I didn't have anything in common with them. So
you spend most time alone watching movie back in the time?
Yeah, or making stuff. You know, I had a lot to learn. You know,
So when you start to making stuff? When you were a child?
probably around 13 or 14
Okay.
years old. Yeah.
And which kind of stuff you start to make? Which kind of stuff you start to make back in the time?
Well, I was learning how to make stop motion puppets
Okay.
and armatures and all that stuff. So, and there were so many steps you had to go through because most of the characters were made with foam latex, you know, and it rots.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't have any of those things anymore.
Yeah, I know. I think that one of your mentor could be Ray Harryhausen. No?
Ray wasn't a mentor. You know, he played his cards really close, you know, and was very he would never talk about how he did things.
Okay.
And some things, you know, if you ask him, you know, like it came from beneath the sea when like the tentacles come in and the guys are throwing, you know, hitting it with a flamethrower. Yeah, he didn't remember how he did that.
But working with stop motion deal with a lot of patience, I think. It's very complex work, a long work to do, the stop motion.
Yeah, yeah. It's, you know, the learning curve. I didn't have. Let me think about this. What's the question?
About stop motion. Work, make a movie in stop motion take a lot of time and passion. Is it true?
Yeah, we didn't have any of the tools that people have today, you know. And so when I, you know, say watch Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, I in the theaters, you know, I didn't see it for 10 years. And there was no real periodicals about this stuff, except for Forrest J. Ackerman's Famous Monsters. And that's where I started to, you know, begin to understand what was, you know, what stop motion was really about. And let's see, what was it that I was thinking? Can you repeat the question? It might jog my brain.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so, but at one point when you went to the college, you say that you were very interested in conceptual art. Why? Because it gives you more freedom?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about
you
that.
could do anything, you know. And I did one thing that worked out really well. And what I did is I got a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I had different students say the vowels, and they would go say A, and they keep doing that for the reel.
Okay.
And then somebody else would go E, 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 E. So I went through all the vowels, and it was my graduate show that at UC Irvine. And it was in a painting studio. It was a square configuration, and it had like really high ceilings, and everybody complained about the design of the place because it was really echoey, you know.
Yep.
And so I got 5 white sculpture stands, and I found 5 tape recorders,
Okay.
and I laid them out about 4 feet from the wall in like a pentagram, you know, so at the stations, but they were, you know, equally spaced. And you know, we would turn it on, and I didn't know what the aggregate of all this would be. I mean, I just like thought it might be interesting. I had no idea, you know, and It was, pretty much a success. Everybody really liked it, and what was fascinating about it is when you combined all the vowels, it sounded like a proto-language, like we were, just beginning to, and you could kind of find it in there, but it's elusive. You think you hear it, but you can't.
Sure.
It was very musical.
And then I believe that.
Yeah.
And when did you realize that your passion could become a job?
When I got hired at Cascade Pictures of California, which was a commercial house.
Okay, for the commercial.
And the very first thing that I did, I was, Gene Warren hired me to do like a stop motion car, that they would print over a map of where Dick Van Dyke was going. And so, that was the very first professional job. And Gene was a tightwad, and I was 16.
Huh.
And so he could pay me minimum wage, which he did.
Of course. And your meeting with Bill Stromberg changed your life in a way, no?
Oh, definitely. With Bill, I graduated from 8mm to 16mm.
Okay.
And, it was just a big playground. It was like an amateur film.
Sound of Thunder was the title, no?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ray Bradbury story.
Yeah. And that is something that you understand at that point it became a job.
Can you take this one because it doesn't?
And how did you get on the set of Star Wars?
So George was not happy with what was shot in England.
Okay.
And he really pinched pennies on things. So Stewart had to make all these things, and I guess he got them from a costume shop. So everything looked kind of Beatrix Potter. And he had time to do a few things. So what George wanted to do, he was able to talk Fox out of some money. And he hired Rick Baker, and Rick was busy on another show. And so there were about maybe 5 of us. And we were all out of work animators that were working at Cascade, and we were all friends. And Rob Bottin was there as well. Yeah, he was very young, and so we made all the cantina masks.
Yeah.
And we had 6 weeks to do it.
6 weeks to do it.
Yeah, and our space had a wall. It was in an industrial area, so there were bays, stacked next to each other, and we shared a wall with this rock and roll band. I mean, they were kind of like Queen, and but they would play their music really loud, and the wall acted as an amplifier, so it was really loud. And we went to, say, hey, can you turn it down? And they just didn't comply. And so we called up the Fox representative, and he would come with George every week just to monitor things. And once he understood what was happening, he went to he was able to find the telephone of their manager, and he said, you need to desist, and or you'll never work ever again. So that worked.
Another important sequence in the movie is the chess set. How was it made? The hologram.
Well, I had a puppet that I made when I was about 17 years old that I would practice animation with. And I brought it into our cantina shop, and George saw it and went like, oh, boy. And what had happened was Michael Crichton had just come out with Future World,
Yeah.
and he had like this
Live action.
big chess set
Yeah.
with horses and live action, and so I have. Oh, hello, boys. I have this a condition, bipolar medication, and it makes things foggy from time to time, and it's like my mind shuts off. So I can't remember, questions that were asked or what I was saying. So I just bear with me. I just have to
Don't worry.
do it. Yeah, I mean it's going to be okay, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
No problem. We have time. So we are talking about the chess set.
Yeah, so George saw this puppet that I'd made, and he goes like, "You do stop motion?" And yeah. And can I have that green thing in my movie? And sure. And so then he commissioned John Berg and myself to make 10 stop motion puppets in 2 weeks. So we fabricated them. It wasn't a very complicated process. A lot of them had wire in them for armatures. And so when we were done with that, we had a cardboard box and we brought it. And George picked out 8 of the 10.
Okay.
And we asked him, so what do you want these things to do? And he goes like, I don't know. and so he was just winging it. And he goes like, well, this yellow guy hops in, and the green guy picks him up and throws him on the ground, and all the other characters are just watching. So John animated. His skill was better than mine, and so he animated the main characters, and I animated all the background characters. Yeah. And so we Dennis set it up, and we shot everything in 2 or 3 days.
How many days?
Huh?
How many days to?
2 or 3.
Just 2 or 3. Okay.
It was right at the end of the schedule.
Yeah.
In fact, the guys at ILM were throwing a rap party, and we were behind some flats, so it was really noisy. But it was right at the end of the schedule.
What kind of person was George Lucas, the young George Lucas back in the time?
He was a great boss,
Great boss, yeah.
Yeah. I never saw him get flustered. He accepted stuff that, so I was animating the Tauntaun. And it takes a while when you're doing stop motion to really kind of get a feel for what it is. And what are we talking about?
George Lucas.
Oh, yeah. So he was, really encouraging. His direction was minimal, and he pretty much liked everything. And we got pretty much everything in one take. Didn't have to do more, but I did the shot with the Tauntaun running up the hill, and the first take I thought was terrible. And George said, no, let's cut it into the movie. And he would do that. It was like, no, let me have another crack at it. And he goes like, okay, but just one. Because we were, the schedule was such that, all the shots were stacked up. And so and with the schedule, we had to, do things as quickly as possible.
And what was it like working for a studio? A studio for a major company, because it's coming from independent production, no? That was a huge production, Star Wars.
Yeah, it was Fox.
Yeah.
And, you know, these guys like George and Stephen and Paul Verhoeven were like really good creative managers. And Paul likened our relationship to be, if he was a symphony conductor and there was a violin concerto, say, I would be the first violin, you know, and so I would be protected. No, I didn't have any interference, you know, no studio people annoyed me, you know, unlike today. Well, I don't do it anymore. I couldn't stand it anymore, you know. People of my generation, you know, were in the salad days, you know, and it wasn't difficult at all to, you know, I do a job, and I didn't want to be a constant employee at ILM because I was used to in Hollywood, you know, having. What's the question?
We are talking about working for a studio and the fact for the major.
Oh yeah, and so if Paul was a conductor and I was the first violin, he and the producers would make sure I had everything I wanted, you know, because you know if the whole concerto was going to work, you know, it was you know, and we didn't know. You know.
And that was the experience inside of the Industrial Light and Magic, because at the time you start to work for them, no?
Just for the chess set.
Ah, okay.
And for the cantina scene, we shot in a little stage on La Cienega Boulevard, and we got to play a number of, yeah? I'm going to forget about that.
Yeah, so we're talking about the cantina scenes that when you're working for Industrial Light and Magic.
Well, that we weren't working for ILM. We weren't, you know, until like Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, we were freelance, and freelance really offered me an opportunity, you know, to work and make money and then have time to work on my own stuff. And I never worried about it because there was no competition.
Yep.
And I would, you know, just waited for the phone to ring and another gig, and, you know, then I go do that.
Yeah. What was Time Gate?
It was a disaster. Yeah. I mean, what's really weird, my mentors, David Allen and Jim Danforth, you know, were the best animators that were around, you know, and so Jim got, I think, Amicus, you know, the British company that did a lot of horror movies.
Uh-huh.
And what are we talking about?
Time Gates, that was a disaster, you said.
Oh yeah, Jim had some blood sugar issue, and he would kind of go nuts.
Wow.
And he was berating. You know, my wife Jules was working there, and Dewey Swafford, who was the art director, Jim would like scream at him for something, and I pulled him aside and said, "Man, you're just not cool. You know, you please stop this behavior." And he said, "I want you to work from home now." And then 2 weeks later, I was fired.
Oh my God.
Which was fine with me.
And then you went on the set of Piranha.
Yeah.
How was the experience in Piranha? And how did you get on the set? Rick Baker.
Well, that's, huh?
Was Rick Baker that you?
Well, yeah, John Davison called Rick, and Rick gave him, he was busy, so he gave him my number.
Yep.
And so it was Joe Johnston. It was, what are we talking about?
Piranha, Joe Dante,
Oh, yeah.
and your experience on the set.
Yeah, so that's where I met Joe Dante and John Davison, and my relationship with John was, and went on to Piranha, and what was it? It was Piranha. It was so long ago, I can't remember. And then RoboCop and Starship Troopers.
Oh, okay.
And John was a huge stop motion fan, and we became very close friends.
Did you also play a little role in Piranha, and you were killed by Piranha? Can you tell
Yeah.
me something about?
Yeah, Joe wanted me to get eaten, and so Rob Bottin was doing the makeup,
Yeah.
and we did a bunch of underwater stuff because Joe thought it was amusing for me to be attacked by my creation. And so we would go out. Oh, we made, probably about 25 rubber fish. And we set up these poles that we dropped in the water at the LA Swim Stadium. And so, we were, getting ready to, when we set up, so the fish would be like this.
Okay.
And they were running on a wire.
Yeah.
And that wire, so there's 20, fish, went through some pulleys up and some more pulleys, and there were like 20 people. 20 people holding this, these lines, and we moved them through, and on action, they would like pull the things, and the fish would go like that. But, there were issues in the beginning where we, I didn't think about it, and I have a tendency to make things a little bit, not symmetrical,
Yeah.
which was a mistake,
Okay.
because you really needed like a fish form, and it was latex, urethane on the inside and skin with latex, and
The fish.
yeah, so we shot that in the LA Swim Stadium, and Bill Sandell was the production manager. But what we needed to do was we put a lot of milk in the water to, kind of give it an atmosphere.
Okay.
And that was not good. Because Bill got a lot of chaparral, the desert plant, and put lead on them and threw them in the water. So there was the chaparral and the milk, and together they combined, a diabolical thing, and everybody started to get like boils, in their ears and stuff that they had to lance,
Oh.
And so that was fun. And so then we went out to location in Aquinas Springs in Texas and shot there for a while. So we were in the water. So John Berg and I, were operating the fish. And John designed this thing. You put the fish here and a pole that went up. And then there was a garage door spring, And so, depending upon the depth we were, we'd push the fish up so it was just on the surface of the water, and then we'd like wiggle it. And so I think it was the first time we went out, and we had made a steel grating that was the base for this pole. And so John and I were in skin diving gear with aqua lungs and all of that. We got trained to do that. And so they handed the rig over, which was probably, around 200 pounds. And so we sank down to the level that we wanted to. And we were going down, 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 down. And it was like this. So here's the ground. And we went like, and it was like, holy shit. And so Ocarina Springs was the source of the San Marcos River. And it's a natural spring, so the water comes up from the ground and leaves a silt. And so John and I, we grabbed onto each other because this was our only rig. We could not, lose it. And so we held onto each other's hand, and we have flippers on, and we figured out how to, walk and get out of this, dust that had accumulated, and just walked up the hill and got out. But that was, yeah? Oh, yeah. Yeah?
Have a nice day.
Oh, you too.
So in the end, you took care of all the piranha. You took care of all the piranha, but also you make a little monster in stop motion in the beginning of the film.
Yeah, and John and Joe were big stop motion fans, and Joe really wanted to have some stop motion in the thing, and so he asked Fox, and they said, "Okay, you can do 3 shots." And so we did those 3 things. And so we were in Texas, and we were going out on location, and we were shooting in rivers. Mm-hmm. And you had to keep your eyes peeled for water moccasins, these poisonous snakes, that can, be up to 3 or 4 feet long. So we had people spotting, them, and if they got too close, they'd pull them out and throw them, away. They'd relocate them. I was shooting a shot. I was on 2nd unit, and John Berg was on 1st unit, and so I was just alone, and I had to do this shot with fish that were, right at the surface. And so they had this this metal frame that was kind of like a children's jungle gym that you climb on. Uh-huh. And so I was underneath this thing, and the production manager was Tom Jacobson, who went on to be an executive at, I forget where. I know Disney and maybe Fox or something like that. And so I was there, wiggling this fish around, and Bradford Dillman was supposed to be trying to get the fish like this, and so Tom was acting as a 2nd unit director, and he would just tell the prop guys, the grips that were, doing this to the fish. So you just see a little bit of, the connective tissue would be him doing that. And they, Tom just said, "Make it more violent, make it more violent, make it more violent." go deeper, go deeper. And I was in this, it was a cage, and the oar came down and banged me in the head.
Whoa.
I was like, ow. Then it goes up and it like knocks my glasses off.
Wow.
And then it knocked my regulator out, but I was able to put that back in. And I tried to get out, and I just got hung up. And fortunately, somebody said, "Hey, Phil's in the water," and so some of the grips just went down and rescued me. And when it came out, I threatened to kill Tom, and literally, And so we were taking a boat back after we'd shot, and I thought it was Tom, and so I read him the riot act, on the radio, and the voice on the other side is, "You don't know who you're talking to, do you?" He was like, "Yeah, it's Tom Jacobson." He goes like, "No, it's Joe Dante." I was like, "Ooh," but I didn't worry about it because Joe was very good-natured.
Let's talk about The Empire Strikes Back and your contribution to the movie.
So John Berg and Joe Johnston were working up Joe was working up the designs for the walkers, and John was making a prototype for it. And George had asked me to do some designs for the Tauntaun.
Yeah.
And so I drew out,
But because in the beginning, the Tauntaun should be a man in a costume, no?
Yeah,
In the beginning, they do something like that, but it was not working.
And so I proved to them that would be a giant mistake. and George understood. I did a drawing of a profile of a human being, and then did my best to make something look interesting, but it still looked terrible. But that was my point. I put it in front of, them. And what are we talking about?
The Tauntaun, that should be a man in a costume in the beginning.
Oh,
You
yeah.
proved
So I did about maybe 20 pencil sketches. It could be this, could be that, it could be this, it could be that. So I just wanted to give them like, a big, thing to choose from. And he chose, the Tauntaun prototype, and I made like a little maquette and had like a, action figure on it or something like that, and sent it up to George, and he accepted it. He liked it, so that's how we got going.
Do you also work on the Snow Walker?
Yeah.
You design it?
No,
Or-
Joe Johnston designed
Okay.
it. I'm terrible at doing mechanical things.
Yeah, why? You prefer to make a creature than not mechanical stuff?
Well, I never built up enough skill to do it, so I didn't. And I would just hire, other people that had that skill.
Yeah. And so you animated the Snow Walker in stop motion. That was
John Berg and I did.
okay. John Burger did.
Yeah.
At the time of Dragon's Lair, there was a talk about go motion instead of stop motion.
That was a joke.
Yeah, in fact, what is the difference between go motion and stop motion?
Yeah, well, I was kidding. I said, let's call it go motion. And they went like, that's so stupid. But it hung on, and everybody just started calling it go motion.
What about the Return of the Jedi? You won your first Academy Award for the movie.
That was interesting because when I was on location, we made, in the Disney studios, there was a great old-timer, Danny Lee, that went back maybe to the 30s. And so I would go down, weekly and look at the sculpting on this thing. And it was big. It was like 20 feet long, wing, foot, I think that was it. And so, you know, I painted the design, and they didn't have any confidence in anybody else. So, you know, I got the job, you know, and because there wasn't anybody else. And so, you know, what are we talking about?
How you get the job for Return of the Jedi?
Oh, well, I had done, you know, Star Wars, and George had a lot of confidence in us. And we were doing that shot where Luke is going down and strafing and goes under the legs, and then shoots the other thing and flies away. And John Berg had the flute that day. And it was a big set, and we had to move it off the green screen, or the stage. And so what we did was we designed trapdoors that, let's see. I think the trapdoors were like from that silver thing to here. And so what I had to do was, and it was on risers that were like this, big table. And so I had to crawl underneath it and unlatch the hatch, get up, and animate the walkers. And it took maybe about 8 minutes per frame to do that. And to give the impression of weight, some of the moves would be just felt. They were so small, you know, you just felt them. And so I would do the first one and then close the hatch and go down to the second one and open the hatch and animate the background walker. And so it all had to be perfectly timed with the motion control camera, so that say the walker starts here, and how far is it that it needs to go before, it would be in the right spot when the camera came down, and the camera would come down, and I forget what lens we were using, but the camera would come down and strafe, you know, the thing. And so I had to just do that all day long, you know. Wow. Yeah, it was like, okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about the creation of the character of Jabba the Hutt. It's true that you were inspired by Sidney Greenstreet.
What?
It's true that you were inspired by the physical of Sidney Greenstreet for the character of Jabba.
Well, it took a while to get there, because Joe Johnston and Nilo Rodis and Ralph McQuarrie were doing designs. And the first one I presented, George really liked maquettes, you know, and so he could hold them up. And he had this kind of vibe that was kind of like a documentary filmmaker. And so he would hold these things up. And every week I had a team of a few sculptors that were kind of not that talented. And Chris Wayless was there. And you know, what are we doing?
You're talking about Jabba the Hutt character.
Oh, yeah. So the first one was four-arm thing that had a mustache and beard and was sitting in a chair. And George said, well, it looks like too much like Fu Manchu. And so I did another one. He says, it's too horrible. And then, so we were at an impasse, and I asked George if you could pick an actor to play this thing, and he said Sidney Greenstreet. And then a light went off in my head, and so I sculpted a little maquette, and that was, you know, in the movie. The one I did was kind of fleshy, and George had Stewart paint it green and gave him like little like salamander or frog things, and that was really interesting because it was like inside it was operated by, one guy that did this, and another guy that did that, and did the mouth, and then there was a guy in the tail, a little person, and he had this crank thing that would move the tail, and it would get really hot in there, So, but we were able to work with, probably the greatest, assistant. I mean.
They work with the greatest for the Jabba the Hutt creation that you were taking it.
Oh yeah, so I sculpted that maquette, and George picked it. He liked what I did.
Yeah, it's become a kind an icon. Jabba the Hutt is.
So he said, I asked him what the scene was. He said, "Oh, it's like the cantina scene, only bigger." And we're like, okay. So we started sculpting a bunch of things. And so he would come in on Friday, and we'd made maybe half a dozen things. And he'd go like, well, this yellow one is going to be a singer. And the blue one is going to play the piano. And this one is Admiral Ackbar. And it was like, who's that? And he was like, he's like a general, or something, or admiral. So he picked that design that we made, and it's very odd. I didn't think the stuff was so good, personally. I would have liked to have hired Rick Baker, but he was too expensive. And so I got the job of, managing that. And we had flow charts made, because we had to hit these marks on the calendar. And so one day, I had fabricated the little blue guy that plays the piano, and we were shooting a video of it just to make sure that when I lifted the arms, nothing fell apart. And, so I was in this costume playing this thing, and George chose Super Freak as the song, and so I'm like moving in time, with the music, and my wife walks in and goes like, "Where's Phil?" And they said, "Well, he's in the costume." And she said, "No, he's not." And I took the costume off, and it was me, And the point being, if you wear a mask or in a costume, you become that thing.
Yep.
You transform yourself.
And you can dance.
You can do anything, And I didn't know, because I couldn't see in the thing, So I was just like, playing away. That was kind of, how things went,
Let's talk about Paul Verhoeven. I was collaborating with him.
Paul terrorized people, but we got along really well. We're on the same page, and so he kind of had to like me to get this stuff done. And Paul would ask things like, "Do we have to be nice to this person?" But we shared a very similar worldview, and we'd done RoboCop, so he had confidence, in me, and I got the job.
Because you told me that also Paul had this capacity to have a kind of balance between genre stuff and hard house stuff. You have this kind of balance in his movie, from trash to hard.
I'm not following.
Paul Verhoeven, like director, you told me yesterday that is someone that can have a kind of balance between horror stuff, trash stuff, and art house stuff. He can have
Yeah,
something-
and I mean, for Troopers, he hired intentionally terrible actors that were phony, because that's one of the things he wants to do as an artist is to expose the artificiality of this thing. So that was, a big point
Yep,
for him. Yeah.
totally. And what happened with Jurassic Park? In the beginning, the dinosaurs should be all in stop motion, no?
Well, the go motion technique.
Yeah.
And I had hired Bill Tondreau as an engineer to make these, stop motion, devices. And this was going to cost, like $100,000 or something like that. And so remind me.
Jurassic Park. In the beginning, should be stop motion and then CGI.
Oh,
coming.
yeah. Well, to make a long story short, the guys at ILM proved that they can make a computer graphic. They used the Tyrannosaurus. And Steven saw it and said, that's the way we're going to make the movie. And I totally reacted emotionally because it was like, to me, it was like the Bombay doors opening up,
Yeah.
and I was about to fall 2,000 feet, without a parachute. And so I overreacted, and because I thought, well, stop motion's dead now, what am I going to do? But I knew stuff that nobody else knew. And so I knew all the modern theories of dinosaurs and who was what. And so I get invited to story meetings with David Koepp, the writer, and Stephen. And I brought in a bunch of books and said, there's a better dinosaur than the one Crichton had, a Brontosaurus.
Yeah.
And I showed him a picture of a brachiosaur or an ultrasaur, which has got a really nice design to it. So they picked that, and so it would be a lot of that stuff. I'd bring in proposals, and they picked most of them,
And you won your second Academy Award for the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
The Academy Award that you won for Jurassic Park.
Award. Yeah. Oh, that was interesting. No, let's back up. So we were nominated for a Oscar on Dragon Slayer.
Uh-huh.
And the studio rep for Paramount was Howard Koch Jr., the son of Howard Koch, so a really important mogul. And so he befriended me. He had just done an airplane with John Davison, and so somehow he liked me. And so when it came time for the Academy Awards, at that time only 3 people could be nominated, and George kind of, and Howard muscled the Academy to allow for 4, which allowed me to get an Academy Award. So it was like, he was really conscious about, you've got to keep creative people if you want to keep them, you can't disrespect them.
So let's talk about Mad God. Why you decide to direct this kind of movie that is so strange, is really a visual experience, no dialogue at all. It's very dark. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, how that began. Oh, in Hollywood, at that time I was doing
It was 1987 that when you start to shoot.
yeah, and so I would go into this. I had the clout to be able to go into any studio,
Yeah.
and I had these different outlines and treatments, and I was summarily rejected by everyone. And so it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be doing that. But that experience, led to Mad God, and that I've been thinking about for a while. And I did in
87.
well, it was earlier, 1986, I was making this stuff. And
So it took like 12 years to finish the movie.
well, initially, I was able to have the RoboCop, the crew, so...
Mad God. The 12 years that you take to...
Oh, no. Yeah, so we shot about 6 minutes or a couple minutes of footage. And then the crew all went to, work for Henry Selick on Nightmare Before Christmas. And the scope of the thing was just too big, so I mothballed it. And it just kind of sat there for a while. And so, in the evenings and on the weekends, I would do designs and storyboards and read a lot of philosophy and Milton. And so I just fed myself, and that's pretty much how I work. I would just do a lot of research, on animal footfalls and all of that stuff. I would have like a telephone book full of like all these notes. They're very thorough. And so when I was writing the notes out, I never looked back, but the act of writing it down stuck in my brain. So
The process of Mad Dog.
what was I talking about?
Mad God, the process...
Yeah, I know,
it
but
takes so many
specifically
years.
So for the next 20 years, that's what I did. I developed Mad God, and I had no idea if it was going to be working or not.
Yeah.
And the composer is here, Dan Wool, and Christopher Morley, who is the director of photography, and Hans. You played some characters, because I did the stop motion assassin character, and then I made a live action one, and Hans played that. And so, I just stole people from the studio, and the nurse and the doctor in it, didn't have any experience acting, but, they had masks.
Yeah.
And I like Nikita because she reminded me of Bridget Helm, the actress that was in Metropolis and a bunch of other movies. And so she offered to be the nurse. And the way we went about it, Chris and I were lighting the set, and we were going to shoot it live action. And it just, we could never make it work, It was just totally falling apart, So
There are some questions, because we are running out of time. We have 3 minutes. Are there any questions?
Hello. Thank you for Mad God. It's amazing as a film, and I really liked it. And what stunned me in this film is, in a lot of shots, you combine stop motion with fluid movement like fire, fog, this kind of thing, and it really brightens the atmosphere. Do you work to build this atmosphere and integrate stop motion in it, or do you work the stop motion and then think about building the atmosphere?
no, we pretty much knew what we were doing, so it was actually, for a lot of stuff, once I got the skill level up, which took the old 10,000 hours, you know. So I didn't feel my skill level was adequate for Empire, you know, but Dennis let me. We had like one of the first reel-to-reel stop motion tape recorders, and so I would go in, and there was a prototype Walker and a prototype Tauntaun, and so I would just, you know, practice every day until I built up enough skill. And so when I was doing the Tauntaun, I couldn't get it to work. You know, it was just, I didn't understand. I wasn't at the level of skill where I had any confidence. And so one day, I mean, they were like 8 and 10 hour days, 6 days a week or 5 days a week. And so
the different technique that you use in Mad Dog, so stop
oh
motion.
yeah, right. You know, I didn't think about it too much. You know, this stuff suggests itself, you know. And so it was actually pretty easy, you know, to put that stuff together, you know.
Oh, see,
Oh,
the last one.
And then one day, you know, it clicked, and it looked, that's what I want. And then it took me another, you know, week to figure out what I did. And so eventually I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it until I got closer and closer and closer to the objective, which was to do, you know, this pantomime that worked. And so then I understood, you know, what to do and how to attack it. But it was a lot of time, you know.
So, last question, please.
Well, thanks for Mad Dog, your amazing
Mad
film.
God, not Mad Dog.
Sorry, Mad God. It's very difficult to pronounce. Sorry, Mad
Mad
God.
Dog is good.
So you started in 87 and you finished very recently. So had you written all the story beforehand, or did you?
Yeah,
did it evolve along the
during
way?
that 20-year period, you know, I, you know, wrote a treatment that was probably about 15 pages long, and that's what I would do. I would just write, you know, treatments, and from there, you know, like any animation studio, you know, I do storyboards and designs and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's what we did.
Thank you, Phil, to be with us. Thank you, all of you.
So there are two options. I can either go back. I've got an hour to kill before I do these interviews, so I'm willing to hang out, or if you guys are done with all this, I'll go back to my hotel, which is where the you know, the interviews take place. So, you know, what do you want to do?
Let's hang out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang out the beanbags.
Good. Then I get the cool microphone.
Yes, yes. Thank you again. So we have to move outside the tomb.